People don't buy products. They buy how something makes them feel. Trinny Woodall, founder and CEO of Trinny London, has built her business on that truth. After 20 plus years working closely with women, she understood how their relationship with beauty evolves.
It's what they feel and it's how they act and it's how they respond to something. And to realize that there was such a sort of paralysis. You would go to a makeup counter and you think, what's for me? What do I suit? What do I get? And I thought, how can you make it incredibly easy for somebody to become an expert?
In 2017, she created Trinny London. What started as stackable makeup became one of Europe's fastest growing beauty brands, reaching 70 million in annual revenue by March 2025.
I think the movement at the time was this very much camouflaging of your face to become somebody else. To me, it was that hiding who you are. I would love to get to a stage where women hardly had to wear any makeup if they had great skincare.
Trinny followed instinct over convention, building a brand that scales without losing its soul. Today, we talk about that journey, the risks, the decisions, and what it really takes to turn a personal journey into a commercial success.
I got about 4 girlfriends to help me. I went on to Emily's list. I said, I'm selling my clothes. So I had about 2,000 women come around the house and then raised enough that for the next year, I could then finance that development.
That's Trinny Woodall, and welcome to the Business of Creativity series, brought to you by Amazon Ads. Trinny, this is absolutely fantastic. We're here at your headquarters in Chelsea, which is absolutely brilliant. One of the remarkable things about you is just, you've done so many things, and a lot of people would say, slow down. And here you are, speeding up, which is sort of inspirational. Do you have a kind of point where you go, I have got to be doing something, and what is it that I'm doing?
I think it starts more with, where am I going next? Probably. And when do I feel this has come to a natural ending and what's next? So I don't think at 22, I thought I will have a beauty business. And I don't think at 20, I thought I would be in TV. And I didn't think I would be I actually thought at 16, I'll be lucky if I get 4 O levels, let alone 2 A levels. And I don't know what qualifications I have and how smart I feel to do anything. And I wasn't from a family where they pushed you to go to university.
You didn't therefore come from, one could argue, a creative background, a kind of encouragement to go and do better? Or was it just accepting you as a woman or a girl? And
it was a background where my mum probably came from a sort of more privileged background than my dad, who came from Coventry. At the end of the war, he sort of appeared having become a captain in the army and slightly, I think, evolved. I would say reinvented himself, actually, if I was really candid. But he was incredibly good looking and a real bon vivant and debonair. And he met somebody and he sort of then got into business, and he was very successful very early. And really successful. He ran a bank in his sort of 20s and 30s. And as a result, we had this quite privileged life. I was the youngest of 6 kids, 2 marriages. We didn't just live in the UK, we lived abroad. 6.5, I went to boarding school. My brother went at 7. My sister went at 8. We all...
Sorry, I've never really tried 6.5.
Yeah, we all went early.
Is early.
Yeah, they were traveling and it was just, this is the 60s. Yeah, right, let's just put it in perspective. It was not the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
And it was nudging 1970. But that was very acceptable to my parents. And my mum had been spending most of her life, she was a war baby, and she had gone to boarding school probably at 5 to get out of London when everything was going wrong. So they did what they felt was right with their kids, but they did not make us feel driven and ambitious. I did feel when I was about 13, the excitement of I want to prove myself, but I just wasn't good academically. And I think and I was terrible at sport. But I did have a very nice man who was my drama teacher, and he was called Lord Ritchie. He sort of found himself disheveled aristocrat, fallen on very hard times, who ended up in a very singular girls' boarding school in Kent on probably a salary of £6,000 a year. But he inspired me to learn about Shakespeare and to be able to find another character to imbue, to feel confident.
That's interesting, because you can You can talk about a business as a character, can't you? What is the character? What does he believe in? And I've always thought that about a business. Because we relate to people, and therefore we transfer that
to
companies, which is why it's called Trinny, because I'm actually not just buying the products you create. I'm buying Trinny and what she believes in and the experiences she's had.
I think that those two things in a way that I said are in conflict, because if you're an actor, you imbue another character, you're hardly ever yourself. And there's many times you and I have met actors and you hardly recognize them, or they're very singularly different people. So I think the heart of why Trinny London is successful is it is what you see. And I am also at age 62, I am what you see. I've lived many lives, John. So what you see is what you get. I'm very candid. I say things how they are. And very early in my life, I didn't know who the I was. So I tried many guises. I tried trading commodities. I tried starting little businesses. I tried financial PR. You know, I did television. I wrote books. So I tried many things. And there was a little part of me that did always feel that consistency was entrepreneurial. And the other slice was I like making people feel better. And when I was at boarding school, I didn't know many people and I was slightly isolated. That connection of doing a little makeover on somebody, it made me feel better about myself to make somebody else feel better. And that became a little bit of a drug, which then did show itself when I did TV. I did a makeover show. Did show itself when I started Trinny London, because you could shift somebody's thought about themselves through the art of what they put on their face.
So it's a lovely observation, that, because that constantly seeking, searching. And in many ways, artists are like that, to find what they really want to do as an artist. I'm a great lover of Picasso, but, you know, he starts his career just copying other people.
Yeah.
Then he goes through his blue period, then he goes through Cubism, then he goes, and he keeps searching, and finds a way of moving on.
But I think also in that, it's about, it's not about reinvention, it's about evolution. And I think that's a lot of people might say, are you really good at reinventing yourself? And I think reinvention is when you negate your past. You know, Picasso brought everything that he had learned into the next part. You know, the blue period was a red period, which was a road, and then Cubism and was a refinement of his perception of people. You know, so all these things are learning curves, like you in your career.
Yeah, reinvention, you're quite right. It's not reinvention, it's reimagining. So there you are, you've had a fantastic career on television, and you're sort of thinking about life, and suddenly you go, I know I want to go into to makeup or skincare, or however you define it. That bringing all that knowledge and all that understanding does actually, I think, help you build something better.
I think there's positive parts to both, because I see a fearlessness sometimes when you don't have experience. And I think that when you don't know there's an alternative, you just go for it. And so I do see some people when, you know, I go to tech events and things, and I see people in their 20s or 30s, and they believe it's possible. They don't have that hesitation and the doubt. Now, I sometimes do have hesitation and doubt, because you go from what's worked and what hasn't worked. But also you still do need to have that sense that you can build a vision for something and just go for it. And so I think they both have merit. One comment when I was raising money was, if you did this for younger teams, it might work. But, you know, and also, how much energy have you got to run the business?
I know. Well, a lot of financial people ask very, very stupid questions, because they're not the brightest people in the world. But I love that thing of what you're articulating there, in my view, is that thing we call creative ignorance. In a sense, creative people often just approach it going, well, I want to do that. I don't know a lot about it, but I'll find out about it. And they keep going. Yeah. And that desire to move on and create Trinny London was kind of obviously came from something within you.
I think that it was two things. I think I had tried in 99, 2000, starting on my business, and I'd always loved tech. You know, I was literally the first year that Apple came out with computers in 79, I had one. You know, I was obsessed with the art of the technical digital world. I loved it. So when, you know, I started Ready To, which in fact BBH were the advertising agency we used across the tube, this Ready To campaign. And Susanna, it was the idea of your business that Susanna would have fried eggs, and I had poached eggs on our naked bodies. And I learned a lot from that time. And I loved the idea that you could translate globally, because I'd already at that date written for a national newspaper, to inspire women to want to do things, that it could be global. Because up to that point, it wasn't. The Daily Telegraph was not global. So when you sort of wind the movie forward, and I'm doing telly around the world, I'd done it in England, What Not to Wear, and a variation of it for BBC and ITV for about 10 years. And then we were no longer Flavour of the Month, but we took it to MIPCOM in Cannes, and about 16 countries bought it. And I thought they just bought the format, but they said, will you come and do the show? So we had mortgages to pay. We were the main breadwinners in our family. So we went to 16 countries, and we made that show from Israel to Poland to India to Australia, Scandinavia, etc., America. And what it reinforced for me then was, whatever country you live in, or your religion, or how you look, how you feel as a woman at certain stages in your life is very similar. These moments we have where we sort of lose perhaps our sense of identity and we need a reset. And I thought, I want to do something for women where when I sleep, they can get it. Do you know what I mean? And when you're doing a TV show, you have to be there in person. And I thought, could I build products that would help women in this? So putting makeup on somebody and making them feel they look more appealing allows them then to look at what you've done to their hair, and then to have a little bit more acceptance over how you've chosen to dress them differently. Whereas if you'd started with the clothes, it would have been, I don't know if I can do that. It's how do you get women to feel this element of more confidence in themselves, so you get to a place where then they can look at the whole big picture. So I thought it's such a great conduit makeup to do that. But the challenge, well, not the challenge for me, but the excitement for me was, I had maybe met on this journey about 5,000 women I'd made over. So I had a lot of research inside my head. In principle, I hate research companies, right? Because I just feel it's just so staged. I like to just talk to women, get the view, have enough women that I talk to really get a candid, objective opinion.
It's not what they say, it's what they feel.
It's what they feel, and it's how they act, and it's how they respond to something. And to realize that there was such a sort of paralysis. You would go to a makeup counter and you think, what's for me? What do I suit? What do I get? And paralysis means you don't make a decision, you walk away. And I thought, how can you make it incredibly easy for somebody to become an expert? I'd started doing it myself. So when I started going, when this is also my sort of mixture of my ADHD, and I love to miniaturize things. Like there was once a Ladybird book. Do you remember they made those miniature clothing? I don't remember the mice one. And I was obsessed with that book. So the idea of the stack was that, you put everything in this stack, and that would be your makeup bag. And I had concocted this. I'd gone to Muji, and I got these little pots. I put names on them. I scraped out and made in my bathroom all these different textures I wanted for the different things you put on your lip, cheek, and eye. And I thought of the colors I wanted. So I made these pots and put them together, and I would be in a bathroom around the world with my rather weird prototype. And someone would say, what's that? As they had their big makeup bag out. And I'd say, this is my makeup bag. And they go, where can I buy it?
And that stackable was your first kind of move, wasn't it?
That was my first move. But my God, to get to that move, I'm not somebody who naturally I had never done prototypes before. I'd never executed, the development of a concept. So I had to take that thing I cobbled together, and then I had got to a stage where I had a little bit of money. I'd sold a few of my clothes. I was then about to rent out my house. So I put that towards doing R&D. So we had a prototype. I got somebody to design it in CAD. We sent it off to China to get the prototype. Came back. The first 11 that came back, I cried, John, because they were done in that horrible blue molding. They didn't. I wanted them to click and snap. I wanted this to be the most beautiful experience. Had to be perfect. When you dropped it, it couldn't break apart, but then you could snap it easily, even if you had 60-year-old fingers. There were many things to think about. And then finally, 11th prototype was perfect.
And as the money was running out.
Literally as the money was running out, because I'd by that stage given up any luxury expense that I had in my life.
So many great businesses come from somebody's personal passion. You mortgage your house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Well, no, more than mortgage my house. I mean, I rented out in the end, and then I had to sell it, start the business, actually.
I mean, that is putting...
Yeah, I put everything on.
Putting everything on the line. I mean, to be fair, most entrepreneurs would go and raise money, and it would be somebody else's money.
It was in the end, but at the beginning...
In the beginning.
There wasn't that sense of... first of all, I didn't know any VCs. And also I did know I would have to do a certain proportion of stuff to have a proof of concept. So it was just, I had royalties because I did books and things and shows, and they were all getting down. So I remember I looked in my bank account and I thought, okay, I'm going to earn $1,000 this month. And my mortgage is more than that. So there was that moment where I thought, what do I do? So I thought, okay, I've got tons of clothes. I'll sell my clothes. And I followed a guy. Do you know Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So I followed Gary for years. I always found him so on the nose. And he just said, what have you got to sell in your house? Because, don't complain that, or think I want to, go get it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go get it. So I remember I put all these things together. I got about 4 girlfriends to help me. I went on to Emily's list. I said, I'm selling my clothes. It was Trinny selling her clothes. I thought, I'm going to rent the house out, so I don't care who comes in. So I had about 2,000 women come around the house, and then raised enough that for the next year, I could then finance that development, tweak what I needed to. I had 500 women come through my house and try out the makeup. And I put on a wall the sort of prototype that became the tech, the personalization of Match to Me. And then got to a stage where I thought, okay, I'm ready. And it was a very tough moment, John, for me to think, do I just go and get a job?
No.
Or do I pursue this dream? And that's probably one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. And it took me a couple of weeks. And then I thought, I can't not do it.
Yeah.
I can't not do it. It will compromise. It will actually compromise who I will be as a mum to my daughter if I am somebody who has regrets in life.
Has steps back from that moment.
And I grew up with a dad who had regrets. And it's not the best environment to grow up in.
I mean, I know it's a cliche when people say, follow your dreams, but there is a cost. But the courage to do that is, I think, fundamentally important. And, you don't get to the end of this wonderful life that we all hopefully lead. And with those regrets, you did it. I mean, that's great. Now, I want to go, because I think one of the other great things you've done is you talk about your brand vision. And in my view, not enough entrepreneurs think about this. But you very cleverly, in my view, created a brand vision. And that brand vision relates to kind of what is going on in the world today. So I've got it written down. I've got to read it because I think it's really good. And your brand vision was to give women the tools they need to fearlessly be their best selves. Now, I think in a world where women, girls are encouraged to look like somebody else, that is a very inspiring positioning to have. But more than that, I think what you're doing, and we talk about brand, not just we think great brands today are not just brands, they're movements. And when you've got a movement, you get a following. And when you get a following, you get a kind of a committed audience that love you. But also, you've got to know what you're against. Because a movement is against something, And that, to me, gives you such mileage, such kind of power in the marketplace. And not enough entrepreneurs sit down and say, what are we about? What are we trying to change? Was that there from the word go, or did you?
I think it's from that time I did all the research of seeing what can make women feel fearless. And also in that statement, it's actually how you fearless. It's not how you fiercely look your best self. It's how you fiercely feel your best self. And I think that's the profound difference to me, because other companies are all about how you look. And it's like that Steve Jobs moment, computers are the byproduct of making your life easier. And for me, makeup is a conduit, skincare is a conduit to feel your best self. And as a company, we are, how do you feel your best self? Because we might not stop at that vertical. We started with makeup, then we did skincare. There's other verticals that will come in, and they are all towards that greater message of how do you fearlessly feel your best self. And I think it takes different things.
My observation of that is you're not selling glamour, you're selling confidence.
Yes.
And I think
100% difference between ourselves and
I mean, you walk down the high street and they're selling glamour. It's like, look like this, rather than what do you feel like?
But even more than glamour. So I remember when we started, and back to your point of, if you start a movement, it's really you're against the tide of something else. I'd say against the tide of something as opposed to against something, because I feel it's just there's a movement in another direction. You're going, no, that's not our movement. And I think the movement at the time was this very much camouflaging of your face to become somebody else, whether it was inspired by Hollywood or caking and baking. It was that, to me, it was that hiding who you are. I would love to get to a stage where women hardly had to wear any makeup if they had great skincare, right? And I am a makeup and skincare brand,
Yeah,
but we are 50% skincare. But I do feel that what is it as women that makes us hide ourselves? You know, we can hide ourselves in a marriage. We can hide ourselves by what we put on. We should celebrate ourselves, and what stops us celebrating. So sometimes it's an insecurity. I had chronic acne till I was 30. It made me on every date check the lighting in the room and how long my hair was in front of me, because I lacked such a confidence in myself aesthetically, because I thought everyone would speak to my chin and not to my eyes, you know, and those are things that really matter to me then. But I think as you progress down the path of life, you can. And we are, you know, if I had my ambition, John, we are the premium beauty brand for women over 40. Because I think it's an area as well, you know, that movement at the time was also towards teens and 20s. And I think it's something that within advertising, as you know really well, in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, any model you would see in beauty and skincare would be flawlessly touched up, and also in her teens and 20s. And if you're a woman who's grown up in that world, you kind of expect to see that. But there is a part of you, a gnawing part of you, that thinks, I kind of want to see myself represented. I don't want to see myself 100% warts and all, because there is something about the aura of beauty where you introduce an element of rawness. But if it's too raw, you still want the aspiration to think, this could change my skin, this could change how I feel. So it's how can you really evolve the original concept of beauty to something that I feel it should be today and what we believe in.
I've always said brands should think less about marketing and more about entertainment. Audiences are tired of being sold to, but they still enjoy things like drama, truth, humor, beauty and excitement, which are exactly the things you need to channel if you're trying to convince people to visit somewhere. Junta de Andalusia did it wonderfully when it worked with Amazon ads to capture the uniqueness of the region. They used the full breadth of Amazon to tell Andalusian stories, from Alexa audio tour, interactive gaming on Twitch, and brand-funded documentary on Prime Video, through to physical branding on Amazon, fresh bags, lockers, and even more. Everything led potential travelers back to their Amazon brand store to start trip planning. You know, in just 1 month, the campaign engaged nearly 17 million people in the region.
It's just an incredible region to explore and hopefully to keep exploring.
So, don't try to sell, try to inspire. Learn more about custom campaigns with Brand Innovation Lab at advertising.amazon.com. Throughout history, you know, artists have painted and made people look beautiful and wonderful. We want to have that sense of, I can achieve that. But I think because you're selling confidence, it talks to people in a more profound way. And I can see glamour going out of fashion, but I sense when you have something so fundamental, so core to what we are, who we are, and how we develop, that continues. And that's the brilliance of a great sort of positioning that becomes a movement.
Okay, I'm going to not challenge you on something, but I'm going to ask you this, because you have the knowledge to give me an interesting answer. If you think of all brands in life, I think that successful brands in life, there's an element which is always going to be what that brand is, an identity of always going to be what that brand is. But there's going to be an evolution in, so let's say for me, we are for women over 40 predominantly. Women over 40, when I started, were Gen Xers. Women over 40 now start as millennials. So there is a nuance and a point of difference in how you converse with a Gen X versus a millennial. And I think the challenge in the beauty business is that some beauty brands age with their audience, and that's why maybe they don't succeed. And so people see them as a brand for my mum or a brand for my grandma, you know, and others are fly-by-nights, and they're so focused on a Gen Z or a Gen A that then when that Gen Z is like changing their pair of knickers, they change on to the next brand, and then those guys die. They die in Sephora a quick death, but they have a huge height and a quick death. So how can one build a brand with longevity, especially in my space? So I do feel it's this balance that we've always got to stand for this thing. The difference to me, if I talk to a Gen X, I say, let me hold your hand and help you understand the complexity of skincare ingredients because it's challenging. And let me show you how easy it is to put on makeup because you grew up in a sort of makeup artistry, Mac day, etc. That's that conversation. If I speak to a millennial, the conversation is slightly different because my conversation with her is, you were the center of the world in your 20s, which the Gen X wasn't. You were the center of the world in your 30s. You got to 40 and you feel invisible. And the words out of women who have just turned 40 about invisibility, I am shocked by it as a 62-year-old woman because I think, wow, it's amazing how that has accelerated in your life.
Right. Now I'm going to answer this. And you're not necessarily going to like my
No, I'm going to be interested by your answer.
Because I think mostly Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z is bullshit. It's bullshit manufactured by research companies to actually talk to large corporations and to keep paying them fees.
God, I love when you say this. Okay, yeah.
They create difference. I'd always go, right, Gen Z, Gen Y, whatever it was, millennials, and then go below it and see what are they saying they are.
Yeah.
And you find that they're incredibly similar. What does change is the technology around you. Now, that goes to what I've always said is that principles remain, but practices change. So when you're creating, in my view, a product, a brand, a service, which has a core fundamental belief, it remains constant. The trick, the cleverness is to keep interpreting it for the next audience.
So the platforms you might be on, the way you translate it to
the platforms
is it TikTok or Instagram?
But fundamental things, because you are selling something, and I think I go back to, you are selling confidence. That never goes out of fashion. Never.
Yeah.
Henry VIII would talk about that. Elizabeth I would talk about, how do I give my people confidence in who I am? And so it never goes. Market research will try and create all these differences that suddenly in the year 2001, we all changed. Oh, I'm no longer a millennial. I'm a millennial. I'm this, I'm that. Oh, I've woken up completely different. It's mostly absolute rubbish. Now, and lots of people will still play with it. They'll go on doing it because they're not doing something profound. They're not doing something which kind of talks to you. Now, here's my example of that. So there you go.
But then I got to say to you, if I do believe that women who falter in their confidence can be perimenopausal.
Yeah.
All right. So there's something around an age relevance to confidence.
Yeah. Totally. And that I completely, but that everybody will get to that point.
Yeah.
It is not because I was born in 1982. It will be different for me. Everybody will go through that. Now, here's my other example of this. The Bond franchise. Now, you're in charge of the Bond franchise, right? Launched in 1962 on cinema. Fantastic. Very successful. Sean Connery, Dr. No, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what it was worth. Maybe as a brand, 30 million. I've got no idea.
Yeah.
All right. Your job now is you've been told now you've got to keep this going. Do you go, well, I'm sorry, well, millennials don't like spy movies. They don't do that anymore. They knew something else. No. What it had something that had base appeal to it. And what they cleverly did was they kept refreshing it. Refresh it. So you start with Sean Connery, you go all through the different Bonds, and you end up with kind of, Daniel Craig. But at its core, it remained the same. And I think...
But the evolution, too, of that. So you had Barbara Broccoli's dad, you had one opinion in the 60s, and then you had Barbara, and now you have David Heyman. I mean, that's going to be such an evolution.
Yeah, and it's constantly refreshing it and creating the story for the next generation. But at the core of it, it's exactly the same. I think great brands have that at their core. And they have this thing that I'm not selling something trivial. I'm selling something that actually is profound, even though it might be a simple thing. It might be whatever it might be, but it has a profundity at its core.
Okay, I'm going to ask you another question. I'm not getting free advice from you.
No, you're interviewing me now. This is great.
So I want to ask you this, that if we look at, because what we grapple with in our business sometimes is we kind of know the core of what we are, but it's translating it to 3 words. So we have fearlessly feel your best self.
Yeah.
Get confidence. So do you think that those kind of statements that are attached to some very successful brands of longevity need to be only 3 or 4 words?
I never make those kind of rules, but I think they've got to say something that speaks to me. It isn't just a glib phrase about the future's today, tomorrow this, which is just nonsense and rubbish. But I think if you think about those great advertising lines that people had, like "Just do it," like "The future's bright, the future's orange," "Think different." Apple.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a sort of profundity to them. And I think I've always thought that poetry is the best place to go to be inspired by those kinds of words, as opposed to the rather glib advertising slogans that mean nothing at all to anybody, and they go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
So it's going back to a profundity. It's going back to giving you power in some sense or another. Just do it. It's a kind of call to action.
Yeah.
Think different. It's a kind of, or the future's bright, the future's orange. We did Vorsprung durch Technik,
Vorsprung durch Technik. I love that.
Which is about technology.
Yeah.
So those things are, they speak to people in the way that poetry speaks to people, to be or not to be. That is the question. What a great end line that would have been.
Yeah.
That was, so I think if it has that power within it, that power of inspiring you to do something and be something, then I think it's great. And I think you've got in your statement here, fearlessly is very important, by the way.
Yeah.
When you say to give women the tools they need to fearlessly be their best selves.
But it is fearlessly feel your best self is what I have in my shops.
But I think for me, I think that's got a great kind of potential within it. When Just Do It came out, I didn't think it was the greatest end line in the world. I thought it was all right. It wasn't exactly poetic. But actually what Nike did, which was brilliant, is they kept giving it meaning.
Yeah, those ads really gave it meaning. Yeah,
built on.
They gave you the vision to see the breadth of what it could be.
So they just do it, and they showed you what that is.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to you because here you are now. Now a company changes, doesn't it? Because it's no longer your kitchen. You've got something like 200 people working here. The nature of a company changes, just as people change as they age. And how do you keep that energy within the company? How do you keep that sense of we are sort of a startup mentality?
I think it's one of the biggest challenges. I remember so much those days of, when I rented out my house and got a tiny little cottage in Fulham, and we were sort of 12 people around a table, and we were having meetings in the bathroom, and the little second bedroom, which had been my daughter's bedroom, was one day MPD, the next day marketing, the next day finance. So those days then went to round the corner in Jubilee Place, and suddenly we were 80 people, and then we were growing. And I think for me, when I'd started in 99, I hired in people that I felt would know better to do something I didn't know what to do. But I think if you do that too early, they want to slightly put so much of their knowledge into the direction you should go that direction is not allowed to be fully formed by yourself. And as a founder, you need to have fully formed that direction. And if you're going to continue and be a CEO as well, because a lot of people are founders and then they just stay founder and the CEO comes on board. But I am founder and CEO. So for me, it was, how can I be the CEO I think I should be? How can I bring the version of myself I want to bring to be a CEO? And that took a lot of learning. And I built up a team, and I had a COO, and then I built in CFO and a Chief Innovation Officer, and we now have an executive team of 8. And I got a CEO coach from Silicon Valley, a very nice guy called Michael. And he first of all came and did a whole thing with our exec team. And then he did a 360 on me. I can be pissed off. I can be too kind. I can be tough, all those things. But people also know I sort of say it how it is. And so 360s help. And then the team did a bit of 360. And then I kept on with Michael. And there's things I've had to really learn. So I think when you go from being a founder, everyone is, they're on your horse or they're in your dragon, the Chinese dragon. So I'm in the head of the dragon and I also have a bit of ADHD. So I'm like, I don't wish you could there. Oh my God, there. And it's like this. And the people are in the back of the dragon, yeah, and they're like this. And it's like, oh, I'm getting car sick. And you have to have people on the journey. There are times on the journey of Trinny London, which is an 8-year journey, where I've had those people really behind just feeling, whoa, I'm feeling car sick.
Yeah.
And I know the times when I felt we're all united as one. So I think it's, for me as a CEO, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it is learning and thinking, how do I do it? And interestingly, what's really helped me in the last year is I do a lot now with AI. And we actually did with our team this kind of 3-day workshop. We got AI champions in the business. We then trained them up. We then had these sort of hackathons over a few days. And we said, we want to build 25 applications with 25 teams. And it was a phenomenal few days because, for me, I'm looking at what are going to be those virtual team members moving forward. How does that evolve? How do you not fear up your team, but how do you empower your team? We have this hackneyed expression, you're only as good as how much AI you know, but it's so much more than that, John. It's a lot about how you utilize it and which platforms you use. So I love Claude. I use Claude obsessively. On Claude, I have a chief of staff. I have a lot of projects who, the knowledge, I put the 3-year plan in, I put in my kind of analysis of all my team. There's no one apart from my darling Claude who can look in a 360 way and not forget anything and give me very objective feedback and really challenge me. And when I started using it properly and giving this whole identity of how I work to Claude. So, I have mild ADHD. I'm great at being enthused, and then I can, forget certain things. I need you to remember stuff for me. If you ask me 5 questions, you've got to come back if I haven't answered them, and quite a lot more detail. But now we're in such a good relationship that it will challenge me hugely, but challenge me in a profoundly clever way. And, I was doing something of a new product development and I put in everything we've got to, and I was looking at an ad campaign and I was looking at the secondary naming of the product and we'd come up with something and then we got scared of it. So we would come up with it and I was working with Claude, putting stuff in, getting out phenomenal ads, I'm just going to say, with amazing taglines that it came up with because of the conversations we'd had. And then we got cold feet overnight and we thought, oh, can we do that? Should we do that? We maybe need to call it this. So I went back in and it went, why are you backtracking? Those were all such good ideas. You're just getting cold feet. I mean, I was like,
Ooh.
oh, God.
But that's great.
It was so exciting.
Yeah.
Exciting. So I think as a CEO, I'm going to just say this, as a CEO, it can be a lonely place. It can be a very collaborative place, but also there's certain things where only you at night can think, what decision are you going to make? And very oddly, having AI in my life in the way that I've trained it up, I find profoundly helpful for me to sort out my brain, what's important, what's a priority, keep on track. I think my improvement as a CEO has happened a little bit in the last year of that connection to AI.
That's fantastic. Because I think, we talk about what AI is going to do. And I also don't think of it as a tool, think of it as something you collaborate with, and that it is a unique tool. And I think what you're demonstrating there is this kind of, it will give you radical honesty.
Yeah.
Because it will just go, well, do that. It doesn't, it's not trying to please you.
Yeah.
It's trying to say, this is what we discussed. This is what we get back. So there you are with this tool. And it's teaching you how to go from being a kind of founder of a company, developing it, pushing it, to now, how do I work with a bigger team? How do I get greater innovation into my products? And also, hopefully, how it will encourage you to kind of release the energies of other people. I mean, I think one of the other things we talk about is entrepreneurs have this brilliant, how they got started, fearlessness and all of those things. But a lot of people watching this are kind of working in large companies. And I often think, what can we give them to kind of take out of this? And I think your use of AI could be very inspirational for them, the way that you're engaging. So if you're working in a large corporate company, what do I take out of what Trinny has said? I've got to engage with AI in a way which is positive, in a way which is kind of helping me be better at what I
Probably better. And also, if you've got team members and you're thinking, I'm not getting what I want from them yet, I post in the work, I say, this is what I'm missing.
Yeah.
And I ask it, what do you think they're missing? All right. And then I feed that back to the team member.
Yeah.
And it comes up with some incredibly clever overview of what could be missing. And then when I feed that back, sometimes I say, look, Claude and I have had a chat. And then sometimes I don't mention
It's called Claude, not
Claude. Yeah. Claude and I haven't had a chat.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's areas where, if you are doing financial stuff in AI and you haven't got, like with Claude, I use Opus 4.6, which is the highest thinking. It uses the most tokens, but I don't ever want it to hallucinate. I've never had much hallucination with Claude. I never use ChatGPT. I love Perplexity for more creative, thoughtful processes. And, when I want to say, I want to write something in the manner of Stephen Fry meets Nancy Mitford, it will get the tone perfectly. But on Claude, I think if you're in a business, you're sometimes headbutting yourself and you're thinking, I can't see what we should be doing here. And I can't communicate with the team so they understand it. And I feel that's where, so I have projects, and some of those projects are actually my relationships with people. And when I have meetings with people, I make notes all the time. I make notes through the meeting. And then I put those notes into Claude. So it understands my relationship with that person. Usually I do at the end of my notes actions. And I also do what I'm finding challenging in this meeting. I might write that down too. So it's getting a build up of my history of how I interact with that person. And also sometimes I say to Claude, how can I approach this differently with them? Because I'm not getting somewhere. So it also gives some very insightful things on that.
Yeah. And do you just, fascinating. And I'm just thinking about you. Do you kind of have a view about where you're going to be in 5 years' time? Or do you kind of go, I've got to make today as interesting as I possibly can be?
I think that it's the biggest challenge because we did a 12-month plan, which is all the financials, P&L, and we're doing a 3-year plan. Now, at the end of those 3 years, there's an element of what do we want to be? Now, I put a statement at the top there, which is, we want to be the premium beauty brand number one premium beauty brand for women over 40 in markets where we have a presence. So part of me feels, do I tweak that statement or do I just keep that as that vision? That's a general vision I feel. Do I feel we have a capacity to get there? Yes, we're just 7.5 years old. We do. In order to get there, because there was wanting to be a tweaking, perhaps, with the exec team. Should we make this a more achievable thing? And there's part of me that feels that sort of real big vision piece should be your biggest goal. If you really, really strove and thought, what could that be? And that's what you put at the top. And then you've got to put the KPIs and you've got to put the strategy in. And that's, I feel, in that strategy, there's really important things to do. We need to have a very good EBITDA. Certain things to have a long, sustainable business. There's a sort of minimum EBITDA you want to have, whatever else you might choose for growth. Do I want to always have to go out if I want to grow somewhere for funding, or maybe do I want to be able to totally self-fund? These things are critical.
Yeah. But I think the important thing there is that you're writing a kind of North Star. Businesses or entrepreneurs get wrong.
I think if I speak to some much younger entrepreneurs, younger in their journey. And so one thing at that very beginning of the journey is too many people try to perfect the look and feel of a product. We had this conversation at the beginning and you came at it from a different angle, but I see the opposite happen. And not enough is spent on how am I going to sell it.
Yeah.
And they just want to refine it because they're scared. And that conversion is the hardest thing, because that's when you have a business. You have a great idea, it looks beautiful, but this thing is when you have a business, you actually receive some money for something you created. And so it's what time do you spend on both? You need to get to a place where, do you need to get to a place where it's 83% perfect, or do you need to make it as good as you know it should be to deliver what it needs to deliver? Then you've got to really work out strategically, how do I market it to sell it?
Yeah.
So I do think that's something I notice a bit. I think for myself, it's, who are you hiring and when are you hiring them? Where is a skill set? So when I first started, I felt, let me hire the people I don't know how to do things. But when I started Trinny London, I had to really understand, I'm very good at product development. I'm really good at marketing. I love personalization. Retail, quite good at, but I've been a D2C girl, from the get-go. So retail is a learning curve for me. Operations, actual supply chain and demand planning. That's a new one for me. But then I need to know the fundamentals, because if I'm going to have somebody come in and run them, I need to be able to ask the right questions to query, where is this at? And to be able to know when I'm being fobbed off with an answer, or when, I really think even if if two people come together and you have a lot of businesses, you are BBH, 3 people, but you all bring a different skill set. I'm me. So therefore, what are those supportive skill sets I really need? And where do I know I also am not that interested in as well, because my attention and my interest is where we get the most force in the business. So I need that backup for somebody where the intention interest they have is going to really cover what I don't have.
That's interesting, because I think that's fascinating. You are a single entrepreneur, in the sense of, you went home at night and you had a pillow to talk to. So, you didn't have your partner you could talk to and go, what do you think about that? And I always did in my businesses. I always had partners, and they were good at that and I was good at this.
Yeah.
That must be hard.
It's hard because I spent 15 years with Susanna.
Yeah.
And we were yin and yang. And Susanna would always say that I was the accelerator and she was the brake.
Yeah.
And there was that element that I was always, come on. And she was like, we'd go and have a meeting with a new TV company. She said, that was such a great meeting. And I go, Susanna, nothing has happened yet. We just had a meeting. So,
it was a meeting,
but it was very good, because I was too anally focused on one thing. And she had this chill she brought into the room. And we really needed that. We needed that in convincing another country they should take our show. It was very important to have that balance and that yin and yang.
A con is an accelerator and a brake.
Yeah, exactly. So it is different to then go by yourself and be the ultimate responsibility for that business and the direction of that business.
And then you have to build a group of people around you that you can trust, they can trust you, with the freedom to kind of call you out if they think you're wrong, and for them to be able to have confidence to do that.
And where I've got to now, which I love, is I have that.
Yeah.
Because I now have people in the business where they'll come back and say, I actually think X, and I'll go, God, yes, that's great. And it's, the most exciting thing that can happen when you are a CEO of a business and you're the founder as well, is that you're in your meetings with your exec team and they come up with an idea you haven't thought about. It's so good.
Yes.
It's so good, because it gives you that, I can let go of it.
Yes.
And it's one of the most profoundly exciting things for me.
That's an exciting moment, isn't it? Because you realize then that you've built an idea that people can share, and you've got a group of people around you who can take that idea forward.
Yeah.
And obviously in the end, you'll get the credit for it anyway. So what's the worry? Look, one of the other things I wanted to ask you is, and we've talked about a little bit about fostering innovation within the team. And do you have any programs, or is it the way you do it that you make people feel that they can express an idea, that they can?
It's a big challenge for me, because going back to that point, I have to so trust that they're good enough. And that's a challenge for me, is like, at what stage do you let somebody run free with their creativity, even though you think that's not a good enough idea, to let them get to the good ideas so you can see that in them. That's one of my biggest challenges, because I want people to be their smartest immediately. And people sometimes need to grow into that. They need to understand a brand and a product. There are people who come into the business. I was meeting with different people who have recently come in the business the last few days. And one of them, I left, and I'd been listening to a Huberman podcast. and it was about awe. It's this guy, Daniel, from Berkeley in California, and he's a really great, he studies awe. And it was all about the concept of the importance of having awe in our life. And so I've been having that at the forefront of my mind of when does awe come into my day. It might be I look at amazing painting. I want to go and see Rothko at the moment in Florence because it's one of my favorite painters. But it's that feeling. And I was talking to this woman. She's not that old, and she has not been in business that long. Her understanding of where we're at is phenomenal. And I got off the meeting and I thought, I'm in awe of that woman. And it was so exciting because I felt our relationship is starting at this point where you go run, because I really have got so quickly how good you are. And I trust you to be your most creative and how you're going to come back with solutions. And then on the other end of the scale, I can have things where I might say things to the team and they keep happening, which happens with every person of that thing. Is like, it gets a little bit better, but it's still there. And I'm not good at sort of hiding my frustration of like, can we just get this right? Can we just get this right and move forward now? And at the moment, I was saying to you at the beginning, but I was thinking, how can I? So when we talk about, we got the product, most people understand. We got the consumer, most people understand. But what's that little bit, the secret sauce, we represent to people? And we used to talk about this in the business as we have me, and I have a sort of social following of people who've, I've evolved over the years. And then we have people from early days and people who just started now. We have a Trinny London customer, and we have people who are in between. So what is it, the DNA in me, that should be infused in Trinny London? It's always been a challenging question for the team, because some CMOs would come in and say, we have to separate them out because it has to be a business that's sustainable without Trinny. But, it gives you an advantage to have the name above the door, like Charlotte Tilbury and other very successful brands. And so that's always been, that sort of grappling point. And so I was working on this project the last few weeks. So what is the Trinny Code, right? What is this code of what we stand for? And how can that then give a focus to everyone when they're being creative in the team to remember these emotive elements of what we as a brand represent to women? And if I can just write them down, and they have a criteria now, they have a template
within.
To then do it. So that's for me, because otherwise I feel it's challenging for them if I don't want them to continuously feel my frustration when we're in those situations. I want them to think, okay, I can run now because I fully got it. And I think sometimes we don't allow people to be their most creative because we haven't given them enough information.
Yeah. It was very interesting, because we had, when Whitbread were a brewer and we worked with them, they trained all their people that when they were presented with ideas, what their first response was to find something good in it.
That's a really good one, yeah.
Not to say no.
Yeah.
It may be that they got to know, but they said always, you find something good in it, talk about that, get the conversation going, and then if it is wrong, you get to wrong. So it created a sort of positivity that people really responded to. They felt, even when they were rejected, they felt really good. The terrible thing is if you present an idea within an organization, say that's rubbish, no, it's not going to work at all, you're deflated, as opposed to walking out thinking, well, that bit of it was good. Maybe I could be doing better over here. It's a very interesting change the dynamic in the meeting. Trinny, look, that's been absolutely fantastic.
Great.
Really, really good. Inspirational. If you want to explore how creativity can work for you, head over to thebusinessofcreativity.com. See you next time.